Hi. Did you know that the N on Cortex's head was tattooed on him by circus performers to make fun of him for being a nerd in a family of clowns? And that said family died in a freak accident? The lore of cartoon platformers are wild. Here we are with Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back, the second game that Naughty Dog made with this IP for Universal. Released a little over a year after the first game, it sets out to improve over pretty much everything like any good sequel should. But as we've seen, that's not always the case. So let's hope that Crash fares a little bit better than our friend Dante, and who am I kidding? We all know this game is amazing, right? The improvements are immediately apparent with Crash 2. To start, the intro cutscene actually plays when you press the start button, Crash's model looks a bit more detailed and less like a Dorito, and Cortex's voice actually sounds threatening.
Obtain the remaining 5 crystals, Crash, and bring them to me.
His voice was changed from Brendan O'Brien, who didn't do a bad job, he sounded like a cartoon scientist, but was replaced with
Boy, me Bob!
Clancy Brown gives Cortex such a sinister voice that are parts of his performance that are just engraved into my mind.
Crash, my boy, you are more than halfway there. But I'm sure you've noticed that things are getting harder. The last 10 crystals will be the hardest to gather, and our enemies will be sending their strongest forces to thwart you.
The story here is that a year after his defeat, Cortex finds a power source in these crystals called the Crystals. Cortex would need all 25 crystals to power the big one, and with all the animals from Crash 1 gone rogue, he teleports Crash to a room that can warp him to the crystals. Also, Tana, the whole motivation of Crash 1, nowhere to be found in this game, and has been replaced by Coco, Crash's younger sister. I can assume that he freed her after beating Cortex in the last game, but what's strange is that she can talk and wears normal clothes. Maybe an effect of the Cortex Vortex that didn't work on Crash? Come to think of it, in Crash 1 the animals got more sophisticated as you progressed. Maybe Cortex had perfected it by the end of the game, but it doesn't really matter. Cortex tells Crash that he found out the planets would align soon and that it would create a force that would destroy the Earth for some reason, and that if Crash brings him the crystals, he can stop it. Now we have a few reasons not to believe him. Number 1, the game's title. Number 2, we watched the intro where he very clearly calls Crash his enemy, and number 3, he just sounds evil. Also, his plan doesn't really make any sense. After World 4, he tells you to bring the 20 crystals that you have to his new assistant, Engine, but Engine just attacks you with this giant death robot and you don't even have all of the crystals yet. Then after that fight, he still tries to get you to collect the remaining 5 crystals, despite you defying him, and then during his boss, which is after Coco tells you Cortex is lying, you have to stop him from escaping with the crystals, implying that Crash gave him the crystals after being told not to by his own sister and him not giving them to Engine. If you want to say it's because Crash is dumb and unpredictable, then why does Cortex expect him to succeed in the first place? He must have a lot of faith in Crash not to mess this up. He's a bumbling moron. He probably doesn't even understand the stakes here and is just grabbing the crystals because of, ooh, shiny. Then he has to have hope that Crash is willing to understand why he should give Cortex the crystals, all while using a phone that gets hacked by a Bandicoot that's younger than Crash. Also, Embryo contacts you and tells you to bring him the gems instead so that he can destroy the Cortex Vortex that's in space because Cortex is still evil. But he sends his minions to stop you from getting the crystals, which makes getting the gems harder. It feels like they wanted to make you choose between Cortex and Brio. Cortex even tries to convince you that Brio was the mastermind behind Crash 1, completely forgetting that Crash saw in person that Cortex was clearly in charge. But since Brio's the one setting the bosses that are bosses from Crash 1 in some instances, at least I think he's the one setting the bosses, they don't really make that clear at all, but then it would make sense from Crash's perspective that he was actually in charge. Brio was treated as the 100% reward rather than an alternate ending. Not that the story of Crash Bandicoot is important, but it's just really messy here considering the first one had such a simple concept. But the presentation here is a lot better. Like I already said, Clancy Brown gives a great performance and makes it very memorable, and the fact that there's stuff sprinkled in between the games instead of a cutscene at the start and at the end helps. The major improvements here are in the gameplay department. Not only does movement and jumping feel much more precise, but you can also crouch, slide, and slide jump to reach higher and farther. It also feels a bit faster, but that might just be because Crash 1 had level design harder to rush through in comparison, And also if you spin during a slide jump, you get a little extra height. I don't know if it was intentional, I don't think so, but it won't stop me from abusing it like I'm a circus freak who caught Cortex doing math. I have a lot more experience with this game than I do with Crash 1. This was the first physical PS1 game that I ever owned, and I've played it to death, especially recently. Playing through is what inspired me to start collecting the games, which is what led to doing the reviews on them, because I'm done with Devil May Cry, so might as well. I'm trying to own all of them. It was this game that did it. Even while working on the last video, I 100% the Insane Trilogy version along with that version of Crash 3, and then right after went right into 100% this version again, and it was nothing but a treat because of how well the controls hold up. Since you now access levels from this warp room as opposed to an overworld, they can take you to any environment in any order. Sure, you start with the normal grass jungle type level, but then level 2 is a snow level, and also the secrets are a lot more creative. For example, all of the color gems have a unique way of getting them as opposed to being just a normal gem for a specific level that the devs pissed on. A good example is the blue gem that's in level 1. You get it by going all the way through the level without breaking any of the boxes. The gems are also a lot easier to get now because you can die and still get the gem. You can even die after getting the gem and still keep it, meaning you can go through a secret route with no boxes, grab the gem that's there, die, and then go through the rest of the level normally for the box gem. Some gems are hidden behind these platforms that disappear if you die before using them, but once you've used them it stays there until you've exited the level. Some levels have secret areas that require you to do a little extra thinking. For example, this game added nitro crates that explode if you so much as touch them. Every time you see them, they're normally jumping, they're always moving. So when you see this staircase of nitro crates that don't lead to anywhere and aren't jumping, you might take a chance and see what they lead to, especially because now dying is only punished by loss of a life and not the gem, so you're much more encouraged to experiment. Which is a good thing because some of these secret exits require experimentation, like this platform on the water with boxes around it. There's nothing on the platform, but why would it be there if you couldn't make it there by jumping on the boxes? And doing so successfully rewards you with the secret entrance to another level with the boxes that were missing when you played it the first time, or maybe another gem. They're not all winners though. I already knew where they all were, so it was second nature to me, but some of these secrets just defy logic. Like, why would I think to go back to the little polar bear here after a chase sequence? Or why would I jump into this hole for no reason? But I won't complain too much because it is 2022. If you get stuck, you can just use the internet. And don't say that isn't an option because you're watching this video on the internet. Another change from Crash 1 were the bonus stages. Instead of getting tokens, you just find them and go through them. This time the boxes in the stages count towards the gem, so you have to make sure you get all of them, and you get to keep trying if you die. But there's no way of telling how many boxes are in the room, so the counter here is pretty much useless, and they don't act as checkpoints, so... But thankfully you don't need to use them to save anymore because the save room is right there in the warp room. Also, since you can die and still keep the gems, I was able to get to the final boss with all of the gems on the first try without needing to go back and do any cleanup. Also, remember that if you take a secret route that you might need to go back and get the crystal if you didn't before. Yeah, the crystals are kind of forgettable because they're not really hidden in memorable ways. In fact, they're not hidden at all, they just kind of sit there and there's nothing about them that's really memorable other than, oh yeah, it's that thing I grabbed when I was running through the stage. But unlike Crash 1, I was more than willing to 100% this game, although it's not a flawless experience. For one, depth is still unfortunately an issue here, especially at this part where you have to jump off these moving platforms that are slipping you off in a 2D section. Sure, you can move on the Z-axis, but that just makes it worse. If you mix the box in the bear riding stages, then you have to die and try again, which can get annoying, especially on the secret stage where you can't see anything. And the jetpack isn't horrible, but it's still unpleasant to control, and some of the requirements for the gems are just not fair. Take, for example, Piston It Away. There's a death platform with boxes in it, meaning you can't skip it, and it's impossible to get back to the platform after you've gone through it. So what you have to do, and this is the safest way to do it, use the platform, die, then go through the rest of the level without killing this guy, then do the bonus level with these boxes at the start that you have to turn on and then go back for, then go all the way back to the end of the bonus level, get to this box, stop on your right foot, don't forget it, and then turn around, make this jump, make that jump, and then do the death route, which is also challenging, and if you die before that checkpoint, you're back here. Oh, and what about the levels with branching pathways? Both paths have boxes, meaning that you need to go against the camera that doesn't adjust for you. So on the level Lights Out, that you need to take the death route until the gem, then you can either try to backtrack the normal route or die and take the normal route, then go back for these 2 boxes in the death route. And all while being timed by these fireflies that already barely light up the path. Seriously, sometimes I couldn't tell the difference between a pit and a slight dip in the ground. Speaking of the firefly stages, while they're a way better mechanic than using Aku Aku for light, they're so dark that it just makes me nervous. You can barely see even with the firefly, so you take your time inching along just for the firefly to leave you without so much as a goodbye text. It just makes this part where you have to go ahead of the firefly to break boxes in the dark annoying and tedious. Plant Food has this gem locked behind getting to the end under a time limit, which isn't a problem, but you need at least 1 Aku Aku mask, and there are only 2 in the level, both near places where it's easy to get hit. And you can't hit a checkpoint, otherwise you won't get a second chance and need to reload the stage. Other than that, there weren't really any gems that gave me much issues, except for one. And if you've played Crash 2 before, you were probably waiting for me to bring it up. The hardest level to get all of the gems in Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex's Dirty Laundry is digging it. I mean, you have to backtrack against bees. This has to have given at least one person a phobia of bees, right? I mean, it's aimed at children. Okay, fine, it's Cold Hard Crash. Cold Hard Crash. This level is a mesh of all of this game's flaws that weren't a huge problem before, but are the very bane of my existence. Where do I even start? The ice physics? The nitro placements and the death route? Ice physics? The fact that you have to do the death route twice to get the box gem and this gem? The fact that you have to backtrack through the death route for 1 box? Oh, and did I mention that there's ice physics? The biggest problem with the ice is that movement is all or nothing. You either move at a snail's pace, which won't give you enough momentum to jump over boxes, or you move so fast that you're flying to your death like... Even when there's a box to stop you, you're still carrying that momentum, and you have to weave between nitro crates, which isn't harder than Invincible Aku Aku, but that means not getting hit once on the whole level and not falling into pits because of the shitty ice physics. The end of the death route has this gem that takes you to the next 3D part of the stage, but if you get that gem then you can't get the box gem, which means that you have to hit this switch crate, then go all the way back to the shitty nitro filled ice to hit 1 singular box that spawns, not hit this last nitro crate, then get back on the death platform, then go through the whole level normally without dying before the next checkpoint, because if you do, then you have to go through all of that again. Oh, and to make it that much worse, there's a fair chance that you get to the end and miss 1 fucking box, because it's hidden off camera during the bonus stage, and because the box tally only tells you how many you have and not how many there are, it's useless and there's no way you should know that there's a box up there. The main stage just to beat the game in this one are way easier than Crash 1, but that might be just because of the added movement. Going from start to finish shouldn't really take you that long, but I would encourage you to go for all the gems because it's not that big a jump in difficulty, cold hard cholesterol aside. But weirdly enough, I do think that this game asks more of the player to 100% than Crash 1 did, conceptually at least. For Crash 1 100%, you just had to break all of the boxes without dying, and beat the Cortex bonus stages for keys to more levels. I didn't bring up the keys in the last video because I don't even think I got a Cortex bonus stage. But this game has secrets keeping gems from you, other gems keeping gems from you, and even death keeping gems from you. But just because you can die without losing the gem, death platforms are excluded, although you only need to use them once before dying is safe again. It feels way more tolerable. Like, Cold Hard Crash sucks, but imagine needing to restart the entire level every time you died. And also, breaking boxes is just fun. There will be a level where I see the secret route, meaning that the box gem isn't possible yet, but I still go out of my way to break all the boxes and do the bonus levels even though I have more lives than I could hope to lose. Because this game is just that much fun. Other than the bouncing crates that take 10 bounces to break and are sometimes placed like this, it's just fun to go through bonus stages to get all of the boxes. It's like a somewhat of a puzzle game in some ways. And outside of those snags with a couple of gems, the game just shines. The controls feel great, the level design is still hallway-like, but they don't feel as restricted. Going fast in this game just feels great, finding my own small shortcuts through the levels. If Crash 1 was obviously their first try, that this feels like they've been doing this forever. Most people would probably agree that Mario 64 completely outshines the first game, but I think this one is on equal footing and aged just as well, if not better. quote me on that. This game is just great. I like jumping on enemies, I like collecting Wumpa Fruit, I like collecting gems, seeing the completion percent go up, and getting the ending where Brio kills Cortex with a fucking laser beam. He was on it. He was on the Cortex vortex. He even laughs about it. Your space station was just destroyed by your old assistant, and you think that's funny? I do, and I'm tired of pretending that it's not. This game has its problems like any game, but it's still one of my favorite 3D platformers, and I could 100% it back to back and it wouldn't bug me. In fact, I'll do it right now. You can't stop me. Who programmed this fucking ice? But can the same be said for Crash 3? Ignore the fact that I don't own a physical copy yet and I had to poorly keyframe the disc onto my hand. We'll see next time. Until then, I hope you enjoyed watching. Subscribe, notifications on, because that's the thing that YouTubers say, right? Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and watch my other reviews that aren't even showing up on my hand because I was too lazy to do anything with it. But do it anyway to inflate my ego. If it is your birthday, then happy birthday. And let's end on another fact about Cortex, shall we? At some point, Cortex may have served in the Vietnam War. This is a children's platform.